There's a very real possibility that the first person to ever save an Uchiha from going blind might not be another Uchiha. Obviously, it's not gonna be Sasuke. Sasuke is currently sealed away inside of a tree, and it's definitely not Orochimaru, because letting Orochimaru near another Uchiha would be like having anyone named in the Epstein files anywhere near a beauty pageant with teenage girls inside of it. You're crazy if you do it. No, the only person who may be able to save Sarada from her Mangekyo Sharingan eventually going blind might be the quietest character in the room, the one who eternally is looking with the side eye and has the speech bubble with the 3 dots inside of it. Sumire, yes, the same Sumire who works in that ninja tech division, the same Sumire who's been studying Amado's ninja tech, that borderline illegal science experiments that Amado did for all those years before coming to Konoha. Sumire has been able to look over all that data. The same Sumire who, just like Boruto, also remembers the truth about Boruto, that Boruto is really Naruto's child. And if you've been paying close attention to Boruto Two Blue Vortex, this setup is not random. Instead, it is very, very thematic in terms of the narrative, and it fits right into a position where it can answer one of Boruto's biggest questions that we have. Where does science fit in this world of shinobi? Can the two coexist? Join me in today's newest Naruto Explained video, where your OBC, your original Boruto chief, is going to be breaking down why Sumire might be the person who becomes the very answer to slowing down Sarada's blindness, how Amado's nanotech could realistically interact and counteract the Mangekyo Sharingan damage that comes when you eventually overuse and go blind. And I also want to touch on why I've moved away from my previous thought that this would damage Naruto's legacy. Instead, it low-key reinforces what shinobi have always been. Even though Naruto himself tried to argue against it, the concept that shinobi are tools, it's still in a position where Sumire could answer that question and prove, yeah, shinobis are tools, but not in the way that Zabuza and Gato talked about. Also, the chapter review is up on the channel right now. We got it up a couple of days late this month, so I thank you for your patience and for your understanding. If you haven't seen the review, I'll leave it linked in the description box and end credits for those who are curious, along with my new Aki Hayakawa video essay from my Anime Explained channel, which I strongly recommend if you're a Chainsaw Man fan or if you're just curious about the Chainsaw Man story. Now, I do think it is worth noting and speaking a very uncomfortable truth that for some reason shocked a lot of people, which is that Sarada's blindness beginning its early stages and her eventually going blind, it was always inevitable. Sarada going blind is not this mega plot twist that should have you punching the air, super pissed off like I've seen some people doing, or scrambling to explain how this is a plot hole. You have a better chance of trying to convince someone in the Black Clover universe that Asta is really this 6'5" mega chad, when in reality he's 5'4" on a good day when he's wearing boots. And to the short kings out there, don't take offense to that. Asta is super short, can't reach the top shelf, and he's probably gonna get a baddie in the form of Noelle or Mimosa. So there's hope out there, short kings. If Asta can get a baddie, and if a socially awkward guy like Sai can get Ino, then never say never. And I would like to take this a step further here. It's not new lore. This isn't even unusual. It's literally the Mangekyo Sharingan's default setting, and she's reaching it roughly at the same rate that Sasuke did. Video will be linked down in the description box. It goes further into detail on it, but every major Mangekyo Sharingan user that we've had in the series so far has experienced it. Itachi, Sasuke, Madara, they've all had their eyes deteriorate at one way or another. Even Kakashi experienced issues with vision if you read between the lines of his conversation with Itachi in the Kazekage rescue arc, because the only way Kakashi would know about the damaged eyesight if he himself had experienced it. The only exception we had to the rule about somebody not dealing with blindness per se was Obito, and even Obito, by the time we got to Kaguya's dimension, the guy's eyes were bleeding like crazy. But then again, even then, bleeding eyes isn't necessarily the only sign of damaged eyesight. The Mangekyo Sharingan, just to boil it down to being a power-up, it isn't that isn't necessarily the most accurate thing to do. I would more so view it like a self-destructive contract, like kind of the same way that contracts with devils work in Chainsaw Man. There's a trade-off for that type of a power. So with Sarada, her version of a contract in this instance would be even worse, because Ohirume is an ability that consumes an enormous amount of chakra and it has multiple applications. So she's using that Mangekyo Sharingan power longer than somebody using Amaterasu, or somebody using Kamui, or somebody using even Tsukiyomi. Those are short bursts. Sarada's using it for an extended period of time, and that counts. She isn't just using her powers, she's burning through a lot of chakra that would, in theory, accelerate damage. Now, the question isn't necessarily, will Sarada go blind? That's gonna happen. The question should be, who's gonna intervene before she reaches that point? And that brings up a bigger burning question that we have to ask, that is only rivaled by, when are we gonna see Kakashi hand Jura a copy of Makeout Tactics? The question that rivals that is, why do I feel Sumire is narratively being positioned to step in to help Sarada? Well, as Scoutmaster Jigen used to say to Kawaki, when you try new stuff out, it only hurts the first time, and you eventually learn to get used to the pain. Well, thankfully for Sarada, Sumire won't be smacking her in the face the way that Scoutmaster Jigen used to do to Kawaki with those black rods, but the pain that she'll be feeling when she overuses the Mangekyo, she needs to feel it at first, so that it makes Sumire sliding in to help her feel earned. And if the story goes in this direction, it's been headed here for a very long time, if we're being honest. Sarada and Sumire, they're tied together in a way that nobody else truly is when you think about it. They are two of the only people that are from the Konoha generation that are immune to omnipotence, that are not Otsutsuki. They are the ones who remember who Boruto truly is. And I'm not counting Damon, because Damon is a blood relative. I'm not counting Kawaki, because obviously he's an Otsutsuki. Same thing with Kashin Koji. He's not a Konoha generation person. Gotta clarify that, because somebody's gonna say, well, what about Damon? What about Edo? Blah, 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 blah. That doesn't count. These are the ones who, they've been operating in a space where they know the difference between the truth and the false reality. They already function as narrative mirrors when you take that into consideration. But Sumire has something that Sarada doesn't. She has access to Amado's research. Sumire isn't just a spy for Shikamaru. She isn't just a lab assistant. When you really sit down and think about her being there over 3 years with Amado, she's basically been trained in Kara level science, technology that was so advanced, it blew away everything that Konoha did, and Konoha was being considered to be a pioneer in the very technology. Then Amado just pulled up and said, oh, that's cute. You see Kawaki? That's my prize cyborg right there. Guess what? All the car inners have the same technology, fam. What you think is groundbreaking, I did that shit 5 or 6 years ago. His technology was so advanced, he rebuilt human bodies on a cellular level. Even Katasuke was looking at Kawaki's body like, I can't even replicate something like that. That's something way beyond prosthetics. That nanotechnology interacting with biology, that is something on a completely different level. The Mangekyo Sharingan blindness, when you just really sit down and think about how blindness happens with eyes, it's cellular degeneration inside of the optic nerves themselves. At the most basic level, that's how you could describe somebody who has eyesight losing it. So you should see where this is going. So you do see where this is going. Or let me restate, you should see where this is going if you realize that that sword scroll that Boruto gave her was the biggest clue that the story was just putting right there in our faces. That, in my opinion, is one of the most overlooked details. Boruto giving Sumire that scroll with future technology to upgrade his sword, technology that Sumire was eventually going to create herself. That moment, in my opinion, quietly told us everything we need to know. Sumire's science is going to evolve far beyond anything that Konoha and even Amado could have done. She's not just being positioned as a researcher, but as someone capable of creating tools that don't even exist yet. If she can engineer future technology capable of enhancing Boruto's sword, why wouldn't she be able to apply science like that to Sarada when her mind is put to it? Think about her reaction when she heard that Sarada got a power-up. Sumire wasn't just surprised, she was also analyzing it. Like, wait a second, Sarada got a power-up? What happened there? Sumire is going to ask questions and she's going to learn about the Mangekyo Sharingan if she doesn't know about it already. This happening right before she even gets the scroll from Boruto. I don't think that she was just meant to take Boruto's sword and make new upgrades. I think that she was ultimately being positioned as somebody who's going to be another pillar of support for the future Hokage. That future Hokage obviously being Sarada. That support is clearly going to be in the form of science. However, when you talk about science and you talk about Sarada, we also have to talk about how science itself could be used to slow Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan degeneration. So if I had to say, why does Mangekyo Sharingan blindness occur outside of like, oh, you're just using Mangekyo a lot, either for ninjutsu or you're using it for genjutsu, you're just using the fuck out of Mangekyo Sharingan. I mean, that's true, but I think that, again, if you just apply real world logic to it, it's tissue strain. Like if you look at real life comparisons to Mangekyo Sharingan going from having light to blind, progressive blindness in real life, obviously depending on the type of blindness, you could kind of look at that and see exactly how we got to this point. Progressive cellular damage is a common thing to look at, which means that if there's a problem, then there also has to be a solution that we can look at as well. But what's the solution? Well, boys and girls, the solution's the same thing that Scoutmaster Jigen never saw coming. It's a motto. Amato's technology, when you just really sit down and think about it, already works by reinforcing damaged cells because that's what that nanotech is going to do. It repairs biological functions. When somebody like Kawaki is damaged, that ninja tech does heal them. We see it on extreme levels with people like Boruto. So we know that there are different layers to what that ninja tech can do, which, as a reminder, as Kawaki said, every Kara inner member, including himself, has been modified by Amato. They are all cyborgs. So instead of curing blindness outright, I think that you could probably look at Sumire creating something far more grounded. A scientific tool that might be able to just slow down the degeneration. That wouldn't be Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. That's not a magical fix, but instead it's more like a support system. Like, think of it like getting chakra regulation implants. Think of it like getting artificial cellular scaffolding. Think of it like micro repair systems that are basically slowing down damage from compounding. That's going to keep Sarada in the fight longer without erasing the cost of the Mangekyo, which I think that has to be how you do it. Like, you can't erase Mangekyo Sharingan blindness. If that happens, I will probably kick my computer screen when I read that chapter. She can eventually look at somebody like Naruto and say, hey fam, you got a ninja tech arm. That's cool. You went from a Zetsu / Hashirama cell arm to a ninja tech arm, but I got a handy dandy set of ninja tech eyes and ninja tech glasses, whatever it is that Sumire makes. Like Naruto, that ninja tech arm, it doesn't replace the current issue at hand. More so, it makes it easier. It makes it more functional. So if you're skeptical, I would say, lend me your ear for a second, because I would argue that this solution is something that fits Boruto's core theme very well. The core theme obviously being science versus shinobi. So when you really sit down and think about it, Boruto's never been very subtle with that thematic conflict. From the very beginning of the story, chapter 1 showed us a shinobi battling a cyborg in Kawaki. The statement was made that the age of shinobi was over. The first arc of the story dealt with that issue of can ninjutsu and science coexist. The second arc of the story ended up being a bridge to the third arc of the story, where we once again revisited that and Boruto made good with this trauma. We ended that arc with Boruto helping a former shinobi turn into a cyborg in Amato, an extreme cyborg at that because of all the modifications he got that were external, finding his way back to the shinobi way. The whole purpose of the Kara arc was taking that science versus shinobi aspect to a different level. That is why Kawaki being the adjacent co-main character is so important. He represents the other side of that equation. When you look at somebody like Amato basically being the mastermind behind all these car cyborgs, he's redefining what being a human is. It's transhumanism. It's something that I talked about in a video essay years ago about the dark themes in Boruto. I clocked all this stuff at the very beginning. I will also leave that linked in the description box for you. Very proud of that video essay. Really sad I don't get to work with that editor anymore. But here's the thing. Sarada receiving technological assistance, it wouldn't be breaking the story. Instead, it would be the story itself, because Boruto is not Naruto. Naruto, as a story, really fought against the idea that shinobi are tools. Boruto is also fighting that story, but what we are seeing is that there are people like Kashin Koji who are viewing and actively using shinobi as tools. Sumire could be a bridge between those two things. So when you really think about it, because we know Boruto's core question is, can science fit in a world of shinobi? What Boruto Two Blue Vortex is, in a way, beginning to try to answer that question with another question, that being Boruto's time skip era is looking at whether or not tools can support humanity instead of replacing it. Kashin Koji was implanted with Shibai cells. That in of itself is basically a form of tools. The only concern I have with somebody like Sumire stepping into a support role like Kashin Koji with the 10 directions, only in this case it be Sumire with the ninja tech and doing the stuff with Sarada, is I do worry it might cheapen the Sharingan legacy, in particular the Mangekyo Sharingan, because I do think there'll be very real criticism that it might ruin the Uchiha tragedy, because they lose their eyesight after gaining Mangekyo Sharingan after going through extreme trauma. That trauma often comes in the form of losing love, but it just has to be that extreme trauma. And I would say I first felt like that, but after thinking about it, I don't think that's not necessarily the case. Sarada wouldn't necessarily be avoiding the cost here. She still suffer from strain. She still need to practice restraint and being more strategic when using her Mangekyo, which means she would still have limits. That technology done the right way wouldn't erase the consequences. It would just function the same way that shinobi tools have always functioned. Kunai, swords, even with Genma with this toothpick. It's all about enhancements. It's no different than a shinobi using jutsu, Rasengan variations, Sage mode, Kurama chakra, the ninja prosthetic technology that Kakashi allowed onto the market when Kakashi was Hokage. That same technology that Naruto took and basically supercharged it. Shinobi have always used external aid to a degree. It's something that Sasuke tells Boruto about in the Sasuke Shinin teacher star pupil story, when Sasuke was training Boruto, and he's telling him, like, you know, back in the day, shinobi were looking at their sword going, what happens if I run lightning through a sword? I can make it cut harder. It's basically the same. That's science in of itself. And I kind of really like this because it's kind of playing with the idea of rejecting tools while also using tools to directly challenge fate. And when you look at Boruto's arc and how he's moved from hating ninja tools and science to now using it to assist others, it's very fitting. And that tension that we had earlier and where we are now, it's very intentional. Sarada being supported by Sumire, a scientist, it would reinforce that. The next generation isn't about abandoning the shinobi system. More so, they're in the process of trying to evolve it, which, speaking of evolving, Sumire would be evolving like our favorite next generation Pokemons. She went from a starter pack, support shinobi, to now having more emotionally grounded of a role, which part one was slowly easing her into that towards the end of part one when you read it closely, which Sumire fans, The jokes are gonna make a lot more sense when the video editor is done with that Sumire video essay, which my patrons have been getting a look at off and on over the last couple months, because we've been taking time to bake that in the oven like we did with the Shikamaru video essay and that 2.5 hour Boruto Part 1 video essay. Sumire isn't just a scientist. She is somebody who was once a weapon herself when you consider her anime story. So I kind of feel like helping Sarada avoid self-destruction in the form of her Mangekyo Sharingan going blind, I kind of feel like that'd be a full circle moment for her. That's a redemption for Sumire. Sumire was gaslighted and engineered by her father to be a tool of destruction, and now she would be creating tools to help a friend, one of the very friends that her father wanted her to turn on, even before Sumire even knew she was going to be friends with Sarada. This is something that could absolutely work. This could raise both Sarada and Sumire's characters. And one of the things that Boruto's story has done is that it's never chosen the easy thematic answer. A lot of times it looks at the easy answer and says, how can I muddy it up a little bit, and how can I get creative? How can I put my own spin on it? Because ultimately that's what you're going to have to do as a sequel series. You have to find ways to further build on what the original's already done, but do it in a way where you can make it into your own while also not fully disrespecting what happened before. The more and more we get away from Naruto having ended 12 years ago, as of this recording at least, the more I understand why Kishimoto was like, hey, I did the outline for Boruto, but Ikimoto, if you want to make changes, feel free. Every writer has their own voice. Your voice is something that is created based off of your life experiences and your own beliefs. No other person is going to fully share those. You're basically adding another voice, another view of how somebody views the Naruto world. And it's allowing you to put a fresh take on it. I like this. I like this potential opportunity. Injecting some of the innovation into this, if the future of the story does go down this route, even if temporarily, then the idea of that quiet girl in the lab changing the fate of the Uchiha more than, say, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed future Hokage did, that would be pretty fucking poetic in my opinion. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, clicking here on the left to check out that Naruto Explained chapter review, or click here on the right to check out that Aki Hayakawa video essay from my Anime Explained channel.